Gestures aren't neutral. They either help or they hurt. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. When your gestures support the structure of your ideas, jurors don't just hear your story, they see it. Welcome to the Foster Your Voice podcast with me, Kristi Foster. After a 30-year career in music and theater, I never imagined I'd be coaching trial attorneys. But once I entered your world, I quickly realized how critical and underutilized voice is in the courtroom. The truth is, you don't win trials with brute strength. You win with your voice. I'll give you tools to unlock your voice so you can communicate not just with purpose, but on purpose. If you want quick action tips to help you stay calm and in control, keep jurors engaged, and inspire your listeners to action, all through the power of your voice, you're in the right place. I'm Kristi Foster, and I'm here to help you foster your voice. Hello, Foster fam. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Foster Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Kristi Foster. Today, we're going to talk about gestures and how they can be a power for good or for evil. Okay, not for evil, but if you're not strategic and purposeful with your gestures, you could be sabotaging your message. Before we dive in, though, I wanted to tell you about something I came across recently in a social post from Adam Grant. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a best-selling author and a popular scientist specializing in organizational psychology. Very interesting. And he was talking about this new approach to journaling. Now, are you a journaler? I admit I'm not great about journaling. I'm trying. I chart things and I have a variety of trackers that I use, but I've never been great about long form journaling. So several years ago, when gratitude journaling became all the rage, it seemed a little bit more doable for me. Now, gratitude journaling is simply writing down 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for each day. They could be simple or they could be deep. Either way, writing down what you're grateful for is a great way for keeping perspective, releasing dopamine, and helping you stay grounded and rooted in the things that matter most. In this post, though, Adam talked about how gratitude journals are great for cultivating happiness, but contribution journaling is where he's seen significant growth and perspective shifts. Now, according to his studies, he found that a huge part of human motivation comes from the knowledge that we make a difference. Gratitude notes what you receive from others, but keeping track of the ways that you contributed to the world around you and directly to the people in your life each day has proven to be a huge motivator. So, if you're feeling a little stuck, struggling to make progress on your goals, finding it hard to make connections, start writing down 3 ways that you have contributed to the world each day. And then let me know what you think. Are you already doing this? What have you been noticing about either a gratitude journal or a contribution journal or both? Maybe you do both. Let me know, would you? Email me at kristi@fostervoicestudio.com. Can't wait to hear from you. Hey, real quick, if your jurors look confused when you say liability, standard of care, or damages, they're not tuning out because they don't care. They're tuning out because they don't speak law. I've put together a free guide called Top 20 Legal Terms to Avoid and What to Say Instead. It'll help you simplify your language without losing credibility, so your message actually lands. Download it now at fostervoicestudio.com/top20 or click the link in the show notes. All right, back to the episode. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know I'm a hand talker. I've never been uncomfortable with my hands or wondered what do I do with them. But over the years, as a teacher and a director, and now as a coach for trial attorneys, I've heard this question from students and clients so many times. What do I do with my hands? Well, it's a fair question, and my answer has changed over the years. Now, early on, I'd tell performers just get comfortable letting your arms rest by your sides. Just start there, letting them just hang comfortably. Now, creating that discipline for students who were doing recitals gave them this calm control of the space. And for a lot of people, stillness feels safer than trying to figure out what to do with your hands. But here's the thing. If your hands stay glued to your sides once you begin your presentation, you're missing a huge opportunity because gestures aren't just decoration. They're part of your message. They're part of how people learn from you, and you're not recitalizing in the courtroom. So today we're going to talk about the kinds of gestures that support your message, kind that work against your message, and why your physical cues are more than just visual filler. They're actually part of how jurors process and code and remember what you say. So let's start with a little bit of science. Now, humans don't just listen with their ears. We listen with our eyes. Our brains process information more effectively when multiple sensory channels are activated at the same time. And this is a fancy thing called dual coding theory. If your words carry meaning and your gestures visually reinforce that meaning, the brain encodes it in two ways, making it easier to remember. Now, think of gestures as punctuation for your speech. Just how, like, commas, exclamation points, and bolded words guide a reader, gestures guide your jurors through your opening. They can highlight key points, establish a sequence, and generally keep listeners contained inside your story. But when gestures are random, though, distracting or contradictory, they aren't just unhelpful. They can actually hurt your message. They create this cognitive dissonance for your jury. They're forced to split their attention between the words and your hands, analyzing which is more important. And all that does is reduce their comprehension for your message and their retention. Your gestures can actually backfire on you. So let's talk about some of the gestures that work against your message. And just a side note, I'm demonstrating these as we go. So if you have an option to watch on YouTube or on my website, go for it. I'll put the links for both in the show description if you want to just click on over. Okay, so contradictory gestures. This is when your hands say one thing, but your words are saying something else. So for example, this is straightforward, but your hands are scribbling aimlessly shapes in the air. Nothing straightforward about this. Again, this forces the jury to have to choose which signal to trust. Do they trust their ears, which tells them it's straightforward, or do they trust their eyes, which tells them it's chaotic? Most of the time, their eyes will win, which means your credibility takes a hit. Also, micro gestures or fidgeting. This includes rubbing your fingers, cracking your knuckles, adjusting your cuffs, picking at your nails, those types of things, those micro gestures, fidgeting gestures. These movements are usually unconscious. They're just nervous energy spilling out. But to the jury, those things read as distractions. Their brains register, hey, something is off, or this must not be important. Another one is overgrabbing or a claw motion. This happens more than you think. I mean, as I'm demonstrating, it seems weird that you would do this, but It happens. Hands that clench and release over and over, like grabbing at the air or worse, like grabbing at jurors. It feels like you're taking and not giving. And it immediately puts people on the defense and breaks that rapport that you're building. Closed off gestures. This is hands in the pockets, arms crossed, hands clasped tightly in front of you. All these kind of signal withholding or secrecy or discomfort. Now, even if that's not your intention. This one's tough for me because casually in conversation, I cross my arms all the time, but not when I'm presenting. Remember, jurors are receiving your nonverbal communication not just for the information, but for trustworthiness. So we don't want to be closed off. Choppy or fragmented movements. This is another one you want to look out for. This is dropping your hands mid-thought, cutting off your gesture before you've completed an idea, or just letting your hands fall. Maybe they even hit the table or hit your legs. Now, here's why this matters. Jurors process your arguments in cognitive chunks. If your gesture doesn't sustain through the chunk, you fracture the rhythm of their comprehension and you've sabotaged your own storytelling. Now, another one is over animation. This is the other extreme where your gestures are too big, too fast, or constant, like you're conducting an invisible orchestra in front of you. In this case, your hands become the show and your words get lost. Now, on the other pendulum swing is some self-soothing gestures. This is touching your hair, touching your face. These are self-soothing gestures and they betray your anxiety. They don't attend to your jurors' needs. They're cues that you're trying to comfort yourself, which makes the listener feel uneasy. They get nervous for you. And finally, pointing or jabbing. We've all seen this, finger pointing at jurors or opposing counsel or even at your own exhibits. It reads as aggression or blame or hostility. So pointing hands tend to shut people down instead of opening up to learning. So open hand gestures will serve you better as you point things out. Now, here's the key takeaway. Gestures aren't neutral. They either help or they hurt. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. When your gestures support the structure of your ideas, jurors don't just hear your story, they see it. Their brains are encoding the message twice, which means better retention, deeper comprehension, and ultimately greater persuasion. When your gestures contradict, distract, or collapse mid-thought, you've made the learning task that much harder for them. You've added to their already taxed cognitive load. You've given the jury one more reason to check out. You've made it easy on their brains to not pay attention. So what do you do instead? How do you make gestures work for you? Well, start by thinking of your gestures as visual punctuation. If you're outlining a sequence, show the sequence with your hands. If you're talking about size or scope, illustrate that space physically. If you're emphasizing a key word, anchor it with a deliberate gesture. I call this marking. Assign it to a point in space. Mark it. And remember, gestures should be deliberate, sustained, and aligned with your message. One of my favorite communication thinkers, Vin Zhang, says, our body moves our voice, and our voice moves our body. They're interconnected. And when your physical cues and your vocal cues are working in tandem, your message has precision and it lands with impact. Now, Here's just something to be careful about. Even when your gestures are effective, like a leveler gesture with palms down that communicates authority, or the placator gesture where your palms are up and inviting openness, you never want to get stuck in just one. Too much leveler can come across as domineering or aggressive, and too much placator can dilute your authority. So, balance is everything. So, just tuck this away. Gestures are not an afterthought, they're not decoration, they're part of how people learn from you. When you become intentional about how you use your hands, when you make your movements deliberate, aligned, and purposeful, you don't just look confident, you are confident. And your jurors feel that. They trust it and remember more of what you say. So the next time you step into court, don't ask, "What do I do with my hands?" Instead, ask, "How can my hands help tell this story?" Okay, that's it for today, friends. Now, if this episode gave you something to think about, would you share it with a colleague? And if you haven't already, leave a quick review. It helps more attorneys discover how to use their voice and their body with confidence in the courtroom. Until next time, keep fostering your voice. Thanks for pulling up a seat with me today and for being part of the Foster fam. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave a review or a comment so I can give you a shout out on a future episode. During the week, you can find me on Instagram at Foster Voice Studio, where I'm dropping little nuggets of vocal technique and leadership wisdom. You can also join my mailing list by visiting fostervoicestudio.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. I'll send a weekly vocal tip every Tuesday directly to your inbox. Until then, keep fostering your voice.